All right, let's get started. Today, I'm going to share with you what's the same and what's different with the new stimulus package compared to last time. Specifically, we're talking about stimulus checks, unemployment, PPP loans, and the Eidl Advance. You're not going to want to miss this. So you've heard right, there is a new stimulus package, and check out this video. This is me just trying to search for the word PPP loan, and the computers, this thing is so long, the computers are just going so slow, they're almost crashing. However, I was able to gather all the information, and right off the bat, I'll share with you that yes, there will be more stimulus checks. There is going to be additional weeks of unemployment and that federal boost on top of what your state normally pays. There will be another round of PPP funding, and the Eidl Advance, that grant, is back on the table. And don't forget to like this video and hit subscribe if you're new here. It really helps. So to start us off, let's talk stimulus checks. The plan right now is to get those out as quickly as possible, maybe as soon as the last week of the year. Now, unfortunately, as of this recording, the amount is going to be about half as much as last time. So that means $600 per person. If you're married filing jointly couple, that would be $1,200 for you. And if you have dependents under the age of 17, each child gets an additional $600. And let's clarify that last part. The first time around, there was kind of that gap where you had these adult dependents, picture college students, maybe people still living at home in their early 20s. They did not get a check, and the parents did not receive a check for them as dependents. They did not fix that this time, and they should have, but they didn't. Similar to last time, all of this is based on your 2019 taxes, so I'll leave a link down below to a calculator so you can take a look at that tax return and see how much you should be getting. Now, speaking of other people who will not be receiving a check, the threshold or the cap for how much you could make has actually been lowered. So for example, if you make right around $90,000 or double that if you're a married couple, then you will not be receiving anything. Now, they did clean up that you need a social security number to get one of these. However, if you're married to someone without a social security number, yes, you can still receive your check and you can receive a check for your dependents. Now, before we move on, as I'm recording this right now, there are whispers and rumbles that this amount, this $600, could increase. It's unclear if this is going to be for this check or for another check later on, but stay tuned to this channel and I'll be sure to update you. Okay, let's talk unemployment. They did extend PUA. It was set to expire at the end of 2020, and it has been extended approximately 11 weeks, possibly even 13 weeks, and I'll explain that in a second. Now, to be clear, PUA extends unemployment benefits to those who are traditionally ineligible, such as independent contractors or the self-employed. Now, in addition to that, they also are going to give an additional $300 federal unemployment benefit on top of what your state already gives you. Now, this is not going to be retroactive, let's say from the summer or the early fall. So for example, if you are still unemployed from the start of the new year all the way through to late March, early April, you can expect to receive an additional $3,000 to $4,000 total over the course of those weeks. That means that the new max is going to be approximately 50 weeks of unemployment available, whereas before that previous extension was maxed out at 39 weeks. One really interesting thing is that there's definitely going to be a more strict back to work reporting policy. So this bill wants employers to have the ability to contact the state if an employee refuses to come back to work. Now, I personally think this is just going to be a mess because it's going to put the employer against the employee in the sense that who's to decide what is and what isn't good cause. For example, if you're home taking care of the kids or if somebody's been exposed, obviously those are good causes, but if you have to report those health concerns and those things to your employer, and then your employer has to get in touch with the state, I think the whole thing is going to be a mess, but I want you to be aware of that new requirement. And remember that unemployment is taxable income, whereas those stimulus checks are not taxable income. So to be clear, if you don't want to get stuck with a large tax bill or some sort of surprise when tax season rolls around in 2021, then be sure to have taxes taken out of your unemployment. Moving on, let's talk PPP. So yes, there is going to be a second round of PPP available, and they even changed the forgiveness rules for that first round. But let's dive into what they're calling the second draw. This second PPP loan is going to be available in a very similar amount as the first time around. However, you are going to need to prove that throughout 2020, you had about 3 months where you made less than during 2019. Specifically, what they're going to ask for is documentation like a profit and loss statement showing 3 consecutive months, like a quarter of the year from 2020, and 3 consecutive months in 2019. You're looking to show a 25% loss in 2020. Now, what I'm trying to say is let's get that paperwork together. If you have messy bank statements, print them out all 24 months, 2019 and 2020 when you have them, and go ahead and just highlight on those statements every time you deposited revenue. Now, if you use any sort of website or software that generates a profit and loss statement, then this is going to be a much easier task for you in terms of getting that documentation ready. But my message is clear. Get that documentation ready, and then when you go to apply for this PPP2, this second draw, you can expect basically the same amount. They're saying that you should get about 2.5 times your average monthly payroll. Now, once we know more, I'll try to create some sort of calculator and spreadsheet, and I'll do an entire video on how you can do those calculations, so stay tuned. Oh, and there's this one special section for certain businesses, and I dug really deep here. So if you haven't liked this video yet, then please do. This is known as the NAICS 72. What that means, okay, and I dug deep here for this, if you're a restaurant, a bar, you run a food truck, accommodation like a motel, a bed and breakfast, you're actually going to be entitled to 3.5 times the average monthly payroll. They are giving those types of entities more money for this second round. Now, in terms of that owner's compensation or how much you can pay yourself, we need more clarification on that. If we assume it to be the same as the first round, then 100% will be available as owner's compensation for the self-employed sole proprietor. There'll be a similar calculation probably for the C Corps and the S Corps and the partnerships. Now, I do want to point out that these funds have been set aside for smaller businesses, those with 300 employees or less. But there's also certain designations for minority businesses or businesses in low-income areas. So if you think that that might apply to you, if you need help with that, just get in touch with me and we can set up a time to talk. Now, 2 more really interesting changes to the first PPP round is that there is going to be, yes, another PPP loan forgiveness application. I'm serious, there's going to be another one. Okay, I think this is like the 4th one. Now, what's good is that this is supposed to be 1 page and for all PPP loans that are $150,000 and less. Ideally, what it's supposed to look like is you simply put your name, that you use the money for payroll, and that you did everything right. Your numbers are right, you stuck to the requirements, sign it, and your loan's going to be forgiven. Okay, they're not going to ask for additional documents or paperwork. However, the SBA still has to implement this. So again, as soon as that becomes available, I will make a video walking us through how to fill in that application. Now let's move from the PPP to the EIDL, but the 2 sort of overlap for this one new rule. Do you remember how the Eidl Advance, for those of you that got it, was probably about $1,000 and you actually had to deduct that from your PPP loan forgiveness? Well, that has all changed. Number 1, that Eidl Advance is not going to be taxable and it is not going to be deducted from your PPP loan. If for some reason you've already processed your PPP forgiveness application, the SBA is supposed to make you whole for that. So no longer will that advance be deducted from your PPP. Now that's super important for this next piece of information. The Eidl Advance is back on the table and we're talking the full $10,000 amount. Now, let me be clear here between what the bill says and what the SBA is supposed to do. Similar to when the EIDL was first announced way back when, there is a grant, essentially free money, that is supposed to be granted to businesses who meet the requirements and apply for it. Now, that grant was supposed to be for $10,000, but initially it was only given out per employee up to $10,000. So for example, if you were self-employed or a sole proprietor, you were only given $1,000. but many of us weren't given anything. So now if you read the language, and this language is super, super dense and confusing. This is where I don't trust the SBA to actually do this properly. But it says that that full $10,000 amount should be available per borrower. Now, let's say you already applied and got that $1,000. Well, the bill says you can still apply again and get $9,000 for that $10,000 total. So I recommend being ready to apply as soon as the SBA opens this up, because last time around it got confusing fast and then they didn't give anybody any of the money. This time around, if they give out the money properly, you're looking at a $10,000 grant that does not need to be paid back. Now, also keep in mind that the Eidl loan is back on the table as well. That's that 30-year loan at 3.75%, and you can use those funds as working capital for operational expenses. So if that's something that you're interested in addition to the advance, keep that in mind for when that application process opens back up. All right, let's recap. For stimulus checks, you can expect about half as much as before if you got one the first time around. They did try to clean some things up to include people who were excluded the first time, but they didn't fix everything and adult dependents were left out again. There are whispers of that amount of $600 being increased, even all the way up to $2,000, but nothing like that is official yet. If it becomes official, I'll make another video. For unemployment, they are extending benefits an additional 11 to 13 weeks for a maximum of 50 weeks, and there will be an additional $300 per week paid by the federal government on top of what your state provides. Employers are supposed to report employees who are not returning to work unless they provide a good cause, but we still need clarification on what a good cause actually means. PPP2, that second draw, is real. You're going to need to be able to show a 25% loss from 2020 compared to your gross revenue in 2019. You can expect right around the same amount of 2.5 times your average monthly payroll, and hopefully that means you can pay yourself in the same way, but we can sort out those details as the SBA provides more clarification. There's also going to be another PPP loan forgiveness application that's supposed to only be one page, and it's for loans that are $150,000 or less. And the Eidl Advance is back on the table for small business owners. And if you are interested in applying for that and the loan, just be ready because it is first come, first serve. All right, my brand new website is live, so please go there to check out other resources. It is full of blogs, podcasts, and videos all about stimulus money and other personal finance related topics. So please go and check that out because I'll provide a ton of updates there. Also, don't forget to like this video and hit subscribe and ring that notification bell. All right, as always, I'm Rich, and until next time.